Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Solomon's Porch One Shot. We are joined today with a fellow guest of the show, good friend of ours, Mr. Sam Chase. How you doing, sir?
Hey everybody, I'm doing
What's
well. How are you
up?
guys doing?
Awesome to see you, man. We are here today to do the review of the highly anticipated, especially for Mr. Sam Chase, Godzilla versus Kong. It just dropped the
Yes.
day of this recording in theaters and on HBO Max. And it was only a couple weeks after Snyder Cut, so I was extremely excited. And just side note, I don't know if y'all know this, they pushed back Mortal Kombat 1 week, so you had to have 2 month subscriptions to HBO Max. Because on the last episode, I said, you know what, you get 3 good movies in this 1 month. You can get your
Yeah.
$15 worth. They pushed it back. Anyway, so side note,
It's so it's your fault. You pointed it out and they said, "What? Jason's got a point."
I'm sure plenty of people have pointed that out there, and they were like, you know what? Let's go ahead and get another month's worth of money from these folks. So, anyway, man, Sam, being our guest, just give us a real brief thumbs up, thumbs down, just in case nobody wants to sit through this whole thing, and then just get your initial thoughts.
Okay. Definitely a thumbs up. A great addition to the MonsterVerse. A great display of what kaiju movies can be in 2020, 2021. I think, kaiju movies have kind of fallen off other than like, Pacific Rim or something like that. I think this is a great example of what a well done kaiju movie can be in the modern era. As a massive Godzilla fan and a marginal Kong fan, I think this movie was pretty good. I think if I was a massive Kong fan and a marginal Godzilla fan, I would think this is an even better movie. Um, the focus of the movie is largely on Kong, and what he's doing and how he relates to Godzilla. So that part for me was I could have used a little more of the G-Man, but overall, really, really enjoyed it. I was just saying to the guys, I'd probably give it like a 6.5, 7.5, something in that area. Great flick. Highly recommend seeing it. I wish I had watched it on something other than my TV in my room and that I had seen it in IMAX, like I saw King of the Monsters.
Yeah. Sean, your brief thoughts before we jump into the details?
Well, I would say that this movie is it feels like Batman versus Superman in some ways.
Yeah.
In that Man of Steel was preceding and gave you the background of Superman. King of Monsters gives you all the detail and background on Godzilla and leads it directly into this movie. So I guess just a personal recommendation. If you haven't seen King of Monsters, watch it first and then watch this movie. There's some elements that'll definitely make more sense in general. I did that all today. I had I had the available time to be able to just pound right through both movies. And I say pound through, but you know what? Actually, I enjoyed them. That I stayed awake the whole time, so it was no problems. Um, I liked them, both movies together, obviously, but I liked this movie. I am more of a Kong fan, so maybe that's why I liked it a little bit more. I like the mythology that we get out of the movie, and we'll get into more detail on that later. But yeah, right here we've got that punch, and that's what we got in the trailer. And for us Kong fans, as we were like, "Oh, dude, yes, what?" Um, but yeah, so yeah, thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I would say for me, definitely a thumbs up. I enjoyed this better than Batman versus Superman, even though I'm a huge Batman and Superman fan. And in that, this movie really did feel like that. You had spoilers, everybody. This is going to be a spoiler review. So you have the good guy, the Kong, which is like the Batman, and then you have the Superman, who you needed to watch Man of Steel before Batman versus Superman, which King of the Monsters. And you get a lot more of him protecting people in King of the Monsters, where in this one, not quite so much. It's just more, as Sam put it to me earlier, a force of nature. And so you see a lot more Kong story build up. You get the Gia Kong relationship and the sign language, which I knew Sean and I would both appreciate. Wasn't like fluent sign language, but it was enough of it and accurate enough for me to be able to enjoy it. And then seeing the comeback at the very end, where Kong's, laying there, then he gets that massive light up Las Vegas pound to the chest and jumps up. You get the battle axe, which I thought looked really cool. And yeah, definitely thumbs up for me. I'm gonna watch it again in my next available time because I really enjoyed it. And myself as well, I am a Kong fan for the most part, as well. And I grew up watching Kong movie more than Godzilla. So, all right. So, collaborative effort time. Good, bad, ugly. What were some of the best parts of this film for you, Sam?
Hmm. Well, I'd just like to say first, just the whole movie, the CG is gorgeous, gorgeous. It looks so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really, really, really loved that. I think one of the best parts about this movie is they understand how much we care about the human characters more so than they did in King of the Monsters and the original Godzilla, which is that we don't care a ton. You can see my cat's tail. I apologize, guys. But no, in the original two, they kind of focused on the human storyline going on in the background, and in this one, it was just we get what we have of humans to move the story forward, and then we get back to what we're all here for, which is big monsters fighting. So that's great. My favorite moment in the movie is when Godzilla stomps on Kong's chest and is like, "I'm the big dog, not you." And Kong accepts it. Like as a Godzilla fan, that was my favorite part of the movie because it was like, "Yeah, I told you guys Godzilla was gonna win."
Well,
I knew it would be.
even on top of that, though, you see Godzilla's foot twist just a little bit
Yeah,
too, kind of
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh yeah, and twist
Like
that
yeah,
knife in.
like
yeah,
crushing a cigarette. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
ugh.
And then, I mean, obviously, like you said, this is spoilers, but it was kind of revealed in a trailer very recently. But the inclusion of Mechagodzilla, just insane, awesome. When I saw King of the Monsters in theaters, I out loud, audibly at the end of the movie said, "What? No Mechagodzilla?" And then I was talking to Jason before the start of the show, like the day after King of the Monsters came out, or the Sunday after when we saw each other at church. I walked up to him and I said, because they had already announced Godzilla versus Kong, I walked up to him and I said, "You mark my words now. When this movie comes out, the first half, 2/3 of the movie is going to be Godzilla and Kong actually fighting, and then in the third act of the movie, they're going to bring out some villain, probably Mechagodzilla, and then they're going to team up and beat him up." And they did, and it was awesome. And they did a superhero team up move where Godzilla blew the fire into with the axe, and then he used the axe to hit. Oh, it's so good.
I
Love the
was
whole
waiting
thing.
on that, man. I was waiting on that Thor on Cap Shield moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's what I was
yeah,
waiting. And it happened, and I was like, ugh.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was very similar to Thor like shooting the. I mean, all the team up moves, but
Yeah.
like Thor shooting the lightning into the back of Iron Man's suit and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Very, very cool. I loved it.
Absolutely.
It would be tough for me to pick a couple moments that I like more than others, but I think that's a good summation of it.
Sean, what was your favorite moment of this film?
I wouldn't say that I necessarily had a one like truly epic favorite. I had elements that I really liked. Obviously, Kaylee, the young actress that's deaf, her whole family's deaf, generations of deaf in her family. So she is legit deaf, and her signing was all legit.
Yeah.
And some of it was like really good, strong ASL too, which we don't normally see in movies. So that was actually pretty epic. My daughter and I totally grouped on that. So I appreciate that they put forth that extra effort. There were little things that she did as a signer, as a deaf person, that would come natural, like signing larger, so more exaggerated hand gestures when she's signing to Kong, because you would do that with somebody so large that would just come naturally. And so there were small details like that that I just thought that were just really made this movie more special to me. But when Kong is hanging on to the top of the building in Hong Kong, it's reminiscent of the old King Kong on the top of the Empire State Building. I was like, ah, I see that little nod. Yeah, that was cool. So
Yeah, I love that part where Kong he like threw Godzilla's attention and then jumped on his back right after that. At that in that same scene, I was like, "Oh, come on!" I mean, I liked it, but I was thinking, I can't believe they did that. But I still thought it was funny and good. Honestly, I think my favorite part might have been that kind of final moments of that big battle, where you see Godzilla shoot the what do you call it, Sam?
His atomic breath. I think
Atomic
there's lots of
breath to the axe. The axe absorbs it, and then he goes and chops down Mechagodzilla to pieces. And that was just incredible.
sorry, real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah.
It just came to me. The for me the most epic part was the Mortal Kombat move. So he
Which
cuts
one?
the head off. He goes to rip the head up
Oh
and
yeah,
off.
yeah.
And the spinal cord's still
Oh
hanging there.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. I also
It,
really
it,
enjoyed.
it's like, hey, don't forget Mortal Kombat's coming up too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the part where he drank that one monster's blood from his head, I was like,
Man,
yeah,
that was metal.
that's that's
That was
that's
super
hardcore.
metal.
But I really enjoyed Brian Tyree Henry in this,
Hmm.
uh, playing Bernie Hayes. I thought that whole entire dynamic between him and the Josh character and Madison, Josh being Julian Dennison from Deadpool 2. If y'all saw that, you would have recognized him as the fire throwing kid. And so that dynamic was cool, but the the Bernie character for me in general, just I felt like he did really well. He was that good comic relief that still had all the elements of the conspiracy theorist that was real, that was true, and then didn't like the Josh character as much. I thought they possibly could have done without him, but they were trying to find someone who would balance out those two extreme personalities. But but I did like you said, Sam, bringing in that human storyline component to it did help a little bit. But I also really enjoyed the boat battle. Just that the one that the very first matchup when Kong
Yeah.
throws and punches them, and I was really hoping for. One thing I kind of wanted is I did want briefly for there to be Godzilla going down into Hollow Earth and then seeing them battle down there, but maybe that's for a future movie because I did hear they're doing continuations of this, they're doing more movies in the MonsterVerse. So I felt like that would have been really cool. But I do love how, spoiler again, how they ended the film with him in Hollow Earth. I thought that was really great.
Yeah.
Um, so, what were some of the not so quite moments for you guys? Sam, start with you.
Well, as a Godzilla fan, I hated that Kong got the last blow on Mechagodzilla.
Ah, yeah, okay,
I
okay.
hated it. I mean, like I didn't hate it. It was cool. The team up move was cool. But, as a Godzilla fan, you don't want to see Godzilla be the helper to the final blow. You know what I mean? So that I wasn't the hugest fan of. That's personal preference, though, of course. Um, Honestly, there weren't too many parts in the movie that I wasn't a fan of. A lot of my complaints slash gripes would come from my, specific bias towards wanting more Godzilla. So, like, I wasn't a huge fan of the way they portrayed Godzilla. I'm fine, like you mentioned, the force of nature comment. Historically, Godzilla's always been portrayed as he's not necessarily a good guy. He's just happens to be doing what the good guy would be doing at this moment in time. But I think because of where they wanted to take the movie, Godzilla gets portrayed in a very villainous light for a lot of the movie. And I think that misses out on some of the force of nature type stuff that he taps into. I think they kind of lost a little bit of that, making him seem like the villain. Um, like at first when I first saw the trailers for this, and I was hypothesizing Mechagodzilla before they showed Mechagodzilla. Um, I was thinking that the Godzilla that we were seeing on screen was actually a fake. Was actually Mechagodzilla in disguise because in the older movies, um, Mechagodzilla, was outfitted from time to time with a skin to look just like Godzilla. So that's kind of where I thought they were going. And when it turned out, that this just was our guy, Godzilla, just going about his daily life, I wasn't the hugest fan of that. I think there are ways they could have remedied that, maybe explain it better, why he was doing what he was doing, that kind of thing. But in terms of just my enjoyment of it as a film, not as a massive Godzilla fan, but just as a film, there really wasn't too much that I was not okay with. There weren't any parts that made me put my head in my hands and be like, really, guys. Um, I like that they did not once use the song from the trailer, the first trailer, because I thought that song was awful. I thought the music was great. Um, yeah, really, really not much bad to say here, other than personal preference stuff.
Okay, Sean, were there any moments for you?
Uh, sometimes the comic relief, I don't know. It's also a personal preference. I like a more serious movie, a nice solid even tone all the way through. I would say it wasn't like overly done, but some of it just came across like, yeah, that was campy, whatever. Um, but like Sam said, I just from a strict film perspective, this is just a really good, solid movie. It really
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Normally I can complain about the CG, but I nothing really truly stood out. Like, no, not so much. It all flowed really nicely. Maybe the only sort of thing is that you definitely really need to watch uh King of Monsters to be able to understand the whole um you know Hydra's head, or King
Ghidorah.
Ghidorah's, um his head, the one that and I'm assuming it's the head that Godzilla chomped off, is my assumption. I could be totally wrong on that, but little tidbit there is that my understanding, Sam, is, and you'll have to correct me because I just learned this, is that the left head, which was the one that was bit off, is commonly referred to as Kevin,
hmm
because he's sort of the goofy head, the easily
yep,
distracted head. Have,
yeah.
have you
Kevin's
heard that before?
the other two have like, I don't remember what the internet's called them, but for reference, the other two will have names of like eldritch horror beings, and then there's Kevin, who's just
Yeah.
doing his thing.
So yeah, it's anyway. I thought it was kind of cool, but again, it's one of those things where like you don't really fully get that unless you saw the movie, and so the significance of that alien being and how it inhabits the skull, yeah, and so it's not a total loss. But I think it feels more rich if you've really made it out to be to say, hey, be sure to go watch this other movie first. Besides the fact that evidently when it released in theaters, it bombed horribly. um, don't know why, because it was a really good movie.
Yeah.
My bad, I was muted. So thank you for
Oh
letting me
no.
know. So my biggest issue was, and this probably be the and the bad and the ugly. I didn't really have a whole lot of ugly components to the film in opinions, but the Mechagodzilla wasn't explained enough. It was kind of rushed in. We didn't really understand the like how the Mechagodzilla could really exist without them controlling it directly, other than they briefly mentioned that they work in AI at the very beginning when they give a little quick brief synopsis of what Apex was. So that to me, it was like just a lot of those extra questions of how his quote unquote powers work or anything like that. I mean, why does this AI want to take down Godzilla anyway and take down Kong? Like, what is his goal? What is his mission? Is that to me, it didn't really. I'm one of those guys that wants a breakdown of everything, and I know they can't give a breakdown of everything. Uh, Also, again, kind of agreeing with Sean, some of those comic relief moments didn't work, even though overall, I did kind of enjoy it. There's some of those like Easter eggs or some of those foreshadowing moments when he pulled the little bottle of whiskey out of his gun holster, and you knew you were going to expect that to show up somewhere toward the end. So moments like that really make me cringe some. It's like, okay, you bring this random fact in the middle of the film, seems like it's supposed to be nothing, knowing it's going to come later. Uh, that's one of my other issues when they do things like that. Marvel does a really great job, in my opinion, at planting those early on in the film and then bringing them back out later. That particular one in this film didn't work quite as much, but the CGI was beautiful. The sign language component they brought in was beautiful. Uh, and the fact that Godzilla, I don't know how many people other than diehard Godzilla fans were pulling for Godzilla in this film. And I felt like, in a
Nobody.
way, that was kind of unfair. See, in Batman versus Superman, it was a little better balanced because I don't think there was necessarily a good guy and bad guy portrayed in that preparation for that battle. It was like, if you're a Batman fan, you're down with Batman. If you're a Superman fan, you're gonna pull for Superman. And then when they teamed up to take on Doomsday, you were like, oh, cool, this is awesome. We didn't have a Wonder Woman element to this film necessarily, but the other thing, I thought it was funny, and this might have been a part of the just kind of comical in the film, but whenever they were talking about cutting all the engines off to let Godzilla know they weren't a threat, I'm like, I don't know if he ever thought y'all were a threat to begin with. And I was like, if y'all kept everything full blast, would y'all be a threat? Like, seriously?
Well, but that really wasn't the point. The point was is
Yeah, yeah.
we were playing dead,
Yeah. I
and,
know,
and
I know.
in order to play dead, So,
Yeah.
I was something I commented to my daughter about was that even though that there were several female, I'll say lead, but although there wasn't like one specific lead. But there were several strong women characters in this movie, but I never felt like they were hitting me over the head with some sort of agenda, which was really nice, especially given Millie's association with her Sherlock Holmes Netflix movie, which was kind of a bit more overt. But this felt like a nice, good, even keel. We had good, strong portrayals, solid women roles that felt equal to any kind of male counterparts, and it I don't know. It to me is a great example of that balance that usually I'm complaining that a lot of films don't seem to have. So, that was another plus. Honestly, I wouldn't even say that this review has a good, bad, and ugly. It's got more like really lots of good things that we can keep talking about,
Yeah.
and maybe one or two personal mess. But
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see this film. Is just that it's you know I'm not saying that like it's my favorite movie of all time, or I'm gonna rush right out and buy it when it releases on disc or digital or anything else like that.
Yeah.
But I will say that it was definitely really good, and I dug it, and I had a good time watching it, and I'll definitely watch it again, and I will eventually buy it. It just won't be at the top of my list of things to do. So, better than any Avengers movie. I'll say that.
I
You know,
disagree,
I,
but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I
Infinity
do
War.
have some I do have some thoughts, Jason, on your question about why Mechagodzilla was doing the things he was doing.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I thought the same thing, that it didn't seem too well explained. But I think what they were going for is that Mechagodzilla somehow had the will of Ghidorah in it.
Yeah.
And the way where that came from is in the scene where you see the guy inside the skull. They say, it's an organic supercomputer. And so if this computer, quote unquote, is still on, is still working, because historically in the larger Godzilla ethos, Ghidorah takes many forms. Um, my kind of interpretation of it was that Ghidorah's will is stronger than any one person's will. And so what happened is when Ghidorah was granted, a body with abilities to go out and defeat his ultimate rival Godzilla again, he kind of jumped on that opportunity. That was my interpretation of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I
Cool.
think
That
you're
definitely
muted
helps.
again.
I muted again. I did that again a second time. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was great, Sean. I agree. I think the balance of the human characters was done well. Like if you were to try to point out a lead character in this film, I don't think there is one. Like it really felt like
Right. No, no, no lead human character.
yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's like Kong might have been the lead because more of the monster elements were focused on him. But I did love Hollow Earth. I loved that whole situation. I thought the whatever they're going for next. I'm not. I don't know a whole lot about the mythological components to the MonsterVerse and all that. Sam, you might have a better idea of where they could go next. Do you want to possibly give us what you would like to see? Your
Yes,
hands are rubbing
I would
together.
love to. So historically, the way Ghidorah and a lot of Godzilla's enemies come into the picture is through this race of aliens that lives on various planets. It kind of changes. But what'll happen is they either send Ghidorah to go take care of Godzilla, or in one of them they bring Godzilla and Rodan and Anguirus to their planet to defeat Ghidorah. So I think this is my prediction. This is just like when I predicted that Mechagodzilla was coming. So I'm going to be right again. I think in the next film, what we're going to get is um, one of two things. One would be they're going to look more at the Titans that they introduced in King of the Monsters. You know how at the end there was the big ring of Titans that all bowed to Godzilla. They'll do something with those, or um, and they may do that same thing just through the lens of they're going to bring in this race of aliens that wants to conquer everything, and they use monsters to do it. And if they do it that way, they could bring in my favorite kaiju, which is Gigan, who's a big lizard guy with blades for arms and a chainsaw blade on his chest. It's awesome. It's metal. uh but no, so I think they'll either go explore other Titans, explore their interrelation with the Titans that we have on Earth, probably bring back Mothra. You can't not have Mothra. Or they'll bring in, this alien race, and somehow they're either controlling kaijus and having them all fight, or, trying to save themselves. And in Act 3, we find out, it was all a nefarious plot. Um, I think it won't be long before we leave Earth in the MonsterVerse.
Do you think
Yeah.
we need humans to make these films? Do you think they could do just a pure monster film?
I don't think so. As much as I love the monster action, um, a great example of this, if you're interested in the Godzilla mythos, I guess technically it's not the mythos because it's a separate film, but the film that came out in 2016, Shin Godzilla, I think it is the perfect encapsulation of what a Godzilla film should be, and Godzilla's the villain. And I'd say a third, maybe more of the movie, maybe even half, is spent on the human interaction. The thing you have to do, though, is the human interaction has to speak to the same theme as the monster interaction, in my opinion. I think what happened in like King of the Monsters, say, I think King of the Monsters, of the three legendary Godzilla movies, I think King of the Monsters has the worst human interaction of the three of them. And the thing with that was it was comedic relief. It was, let's have characters we like, let's have characters we don't like, let's have a hero, let's have a villain, let's tell this story about family. And then there was the whole other thing with Godzilla fighting the monsters. Whereas in Shin Godzilla, the one from 2016, the point of Godzilla's arrival and his destruction of Tokyo and all that kind of good stuff is the pollution and, general environmental problems we're having. And then the human section further backs that up because you spend the movie watching these useless politicians try to go through phone calls and meetings all to just save, the people that are actually whose lives are actually in danger. So the two narratives reinforce each other of, we need to pay more attention, we need to be more useful, we need to be more proactive in our maintenance of ourselves and our planet, versus having two different stories. I don't think you can have a Godzilla universe or a monster verse. I'm gonna call it the Godzilla universe because he's the king, obviously. I don't think you can have a Godzilla universe film without humans, but I think you need to make sure that the human parts of it aren't running contrary to the actual monster storyline.
Gotcha. I heard that the issue with not calling him King Kong was a copyright issue. Um, is what I heard. I'm not sure,
Hmm.
but that's why he wasn't called King Kong. Even though they refer to him as the King or King multiple times in the film, they couldn't call it Godzilla versus King Kong. And so let me see. There
Wonder where
was
that stems from.
I don't know.
It's probably still with, because even Skull Island was just Kong Skull Island. It
Yeah.
wasn't King Kong Skull Island. I wonder if that stems from the Peter Jackson King Kong with Jack Black,
Hmm.
and I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays Millie Bobby Brown's dad has been in two separate King Kong movies now. He was in Jackson's King Kong, and then he was just in um, Godzilla versus Kong. So good for him. But maybe that's where it stems from. I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been the one with Naomi Watts, Jack Black. Yeah, that was called King Kong. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. So I would say one more thing though, that they the little ball piece in the Apex facility that the Bernie character saw and then he didn't see.
Right.
Now, y'all might be able to clarify, or Sam or whoever, is that something they were using to bring Godzilla to where they were so that he would be destructive, so then they could come and be the heroes with the Mechagodzilla? Because that's what I was thinking. Like in the same way in King of the Monsters, they use certain things to provoke or to calm or to communicate with the monsters. I was thinking that that same device was something they created to do the same thing, but to kind of somewhat intimidate Godzilla or try to.
I think it's just foreshadowing.
Okay.
I think, well, the piece that we saw, the little ball thing, was one of the eyes of
Okay.
Mechagodzilla, as I
Okay.
understand it. And that was also the blueprint he was looking at when he when he downloaded the thing from the PC. Um, Historically, Godzilla only comes to the coast or wherever he's going for a couple reasons. One is if the Earth is in danger, obviously, then he comes to their rescue. And then two, a lot of times is when there's massive amounts of nuclear power being generated. And then three, it's just when there's threats. So I think my understanding of the subtext of this was Godzilla is this godlike animal, basically, and sensed that there was a disturbance or whatever. Because, there was the scene where Godzilla's swimming through the ocean and Mechagodzilla turns on and he yanks around and takes off towards
Right.
Mechagodzilla. And maybe that's further indication of Ghidorah in some incarnation. He sensed his age old enemy and was like, well, I gotta go take care of this dude. He may look like me, but he's clearly not me, and he's got a bad dude inside of him. I think that was my interpretation of it, at least.
Yeah, he sensed him in the force.
Yeah, oh yeah. There was
Well,
a great disturbance in the force, as if
Yes.
thousands
yeah.
of lives were stomped out as this giant monster rampaged
Well,
through whatever city it was.
Sam, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I think that you can actually have a film without humans in it whatsoever. I don't think that you can sustain multiple movies with it, but I think that you can have quite exquisite storytelling through just physical interactions between creatures. I mean, think about it in not too dissimilar to the fashion of watching like a nature show. You're watching how the animals and the creatures are maneuvering around with one another. Some of that's intuitive, some of it just tells its own story. And you think about how much of what we saw Kong doing that felt like it was, it was telling its own story without having to have any additional communication. Now they could go a little bit further and do subtitles for any sign language if Kong hooks up with some other um, you know huge
Super
apes.
Ape.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I could totally see them going completely outer space for a movie and it being nothing but alien kaiju battle with Godzilla. I could see that. I would love that. I think that'd be epic. You get more of that alien kaiju kind of thing going with Pacific Rim movies, and so I think that there's a huge plethora of creative kaiju's that we could see come about that would just be tons of fun to see them battle out. And given that we saw as good of CG as we got in this movie, they could totally make this movie a total CG film, and we'd probably just love it. We'd eat it up by spoonfuls.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do agree. When you put it that way, there's a lot of storytelling that can be done with just the physicality of monsters and stuff like that. I think my bias is coming from growing up on Godzilla movies, and that's kind of always the
Sure.
formula. Um, I think you would need the right combination of monsters, though.
Mm.
Like you couldn't do a solo monster movie where the hero is Rodan. I don't think, because
Yeah.
Rodan's just not that interesting. Um, but talking about what could happen. I mean, there's so many kaiju in the Godzilla universe. I mean, there is literally a kaiju that's just called Space Godzilla. He's just Godzilla with big crystals, and he flies through space like a meteor.
Right.
There's just so much they could draw from. There's so much mythos that I have to say, if we're looking towards future films, I really, really hope that Legendary, I think that's still who's doing it, um, that they acknowledge what came before and they don't try to make their own new Godzilla universe, because there's so many cool kaiju. There's so many that the fans are really emotionally attached to. Um, like, sure, they've got the big ones. They've got the Mothra, the Ghidorah, the Rodan, et cetera, et cetera. But I think they have such this wealth of cool character monsters that they could bring in. I'm going to be a little sad if they try to just, we're going to do our own thing and Toho's Godzilla is separate. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think they're gonna do something great no matter what it is. I think just the capacity, the availability, and the ability to do what they can do with CG at this point is just astronomical, and I think that is going to be great. The human elements might not all be there and well, but I think the monster part of those films are going to be fantastic. So fellas, glad y'all were able to jump on here to discuss this film. We'd love to hear what you thought in the comments. Everybody who's watching this, give us your opinion. Was it good, bad? Are you tired of these big action films? And if you are, you probably don't like Solomon Sports Podcast, because that's pretty much all we cover. So anyway, Sam, thanks again for joining us, man.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It
man.
was a pleasure. I mean, to talk about the G-Man? Come on.
Yeah,
Come
man.
on.
We got to get you back on the full show, on the full
I'd love to.
podcast.
Yeah,
So we'll
absolutely.
do that soon. And until next time, we will see y'all again. Always remember, Jesus loves you way more than we could.